They were described as psychopaths who shot people for fun.
The leaders of Manchester's most notorious gun gang.
I can't underestimate the threat that these two individuals posed.
Money, drugs, guns, give them respect. That's what they demand.
This is the exclusive story of how a specialist police team took down the leaders of a feared criminal gang, who brought murder and mayhem to the streets of one of Britain's biggest cities.
I've been investigating the criminal activity of the South Manchester gangs now for over 20 years. Colin, Joyce and Amos are the most ruthless criminals that I've ever investigated.
This is Manchester, a city famous for its football teams and its music scene. But it's also earned a less welcome reputation for gun crime. In the past few years, Manchester has been blighted by weapons and by gangs. But a police investigation has transformed this city and smashed the gun culture. The investigation would lead to a remarkable trial, the most severe sentences in Manchester gangland history, and a unique and controversial publicity campaign. This is the story of how Greater Manchester Police brought down the Gooch gang. Rod Carter is part of Greater Manchester Police's Specialist Excalibur unit, set up in 2004 to tackle Manchester's gangs, many of which operate in the inner city area of Moss Side. Excalibur was needed because too many young people were dying on the streets.
Okay, we're on Westwood Street in Moss Side now. It's been a hive of gang activity over the years. Just at the junction here, a man by the name of Raymond Pitt was sat in his car when he was shot and killed. And as we come out at the end of Westwood Street, on the right-hand side is Broadfield Park, where Jesse James, a 15-year-old schoolboy, was shot and killed. If you look to your left, you'll see Alvino's Takeaway, where Benji Stanley, another schoolboy, was shot and killed. Justin Maynard was shot just on the left-hand side here.
Gun crime became so commonplace in Manchester that the city was given a new name by the press. These were violent streets where hooded gang members began wearing body armor under their tracksuits. And gang battles were fought out on hospital corridors.
I can remember speaking to a gang member who was 14 years of age, and he told me that he'd taken every drug that you could think of, and nothing gave him a high like shooting somebody.
Much of the conflict centred around the Alexandra Park estate in Moss Side. The west of the estate was the turf of the Gooch gang, centred around Gooch Close, which was to become one of the most notorious streets in Britain. The Gooch gang's bitter rivals were the Doddington from the other side of the estate.
For about 18 months, both groups coexisted quite peacefully, really. But there was a shooting in March 1991, and since then there's been in excess of 24 murders.
The violence presented Greater Manchester Police with the biggest challenge they'd ever faced. Detective Chief Inspector Steve Eckersley was the man assigned to bring the gangs down.
The rivalry between the South Manchester gangs has been a significant problem for Manchester for over 20 years. They are involved in tit-for-tat shootings, serious woundings and homicides of mainly young black males.
Top of the list of targets was the Gooch gang. Colin, Joyce and Lee Amos were the gang's self-styled generals.
They were involved in the criminal use of firearms, gang homicides and the distribution of Class A drugs, which includes heroin and cocaine. They were prepared to use firearms in public areas to murder rival gang members.
American law enforcement agencies refer to gang members as being impact players and followers, and I think there's little doubt that Amos and Joyce were certainly the most impactful players involved in the South Manchester gang scene. To speak to them both, they were both quite different characters. Amos always appeared calm and confident. Amos certainly had a reputation around the Moss Side and Longside areas, and he's able to commit acts that most of us would find abhorrent and just be able to walk away from them and carry on as normal. Colin Joyce was a manipulator, and it appeared that quite a few of the other gang members who were not as high up within the hierarchy as him would do things to try and impress him.
Both Joyce and Amos had been convicted of firearms offences.
The police executed a warrant at a safe house in Moss Side, and in that premises they found a Scorpion submachine gun capable of discharging over 1,000 rounds per minute.
They were both found to be wearing jeans that had the pockets adapted so that they could fit firearms in them, which I think is an indication of the kind of individuals you're dealing with.
Joyce and Amos received 9-year sentences, but both were released early on licence. This is Colin Joyce, filmed on the day he left prison. Once on the outside, he quickly regained control of a fearsome gang of thugs and criminals.
Yo.
This is never-before-seen footage taken at a party attended by members of the Gooch gang. Although Joyce and Amos weren't present, their key lieutenants were.
Wrapping it up. So cute, girl.
This is Hassan Shah, who handled guns and supplied drugs.
Ricky. Ricky.
This is Jamaican-born Ricardo Rick Dog Williams, who was prepared to commit murder.
Represent, bro.
And this is his brother, Narada Williams, known as Yardy, who was also ready to kill for the gang. Although they didn't know it, they were on a collision course with the police that would put many of them behind bars for decades. In the world of the Gooch gang, respect was demanded, and even the perception of being close to a rival gang could have deadly consequences. Yukal Chin was loosely associated with the Longsight crew, an offshoot of the Doddington gang. But it was enough to make him an enemy of the Gooch. Yukal would be gunned down in a merciless attack.
In a hospital bed, with blood all on his clothes. That's the last thing I seen of my brother.
Yukal's murder began what would be one of the most remarkable, complex and challenging investigations ever undertaken. Until recently, Yukal's killers may well have gone undetected, but dramatic advances in investigative techniques would enable police to hunt them down and take them off the streets. The case would rely on high-tech surveillance, DNA profiling, ballistic expertise and complex evidence from CCTV.
This exact spot where the fatal shots were discharged and the actual point of where the murder took place has been caught on film.
Colin Joyce and Lee Amos were the leaders of the Gooch gang, one of the most violent gangs Manchester has ever known. They were major players in a city famous for its gun crime, and police believed they had a score to settle. In 2002, Lee Amos's brother Stephen was killed by members of the Longsight crew, a faction of the Doddington gang. And investigators believed that both Joyce and Amos had vowed to avenge Stephen's death. Ukal Chin would be the first victim. Father of 2 young children, Ukal was loosely associated with the Longsight crew, but he was trying to move away from gang activity and turn his life around. He didn't get the chance.
Just before 7 p.m. on Friday, the 15th of June 2007, Ukal Chin was driving a red Renault Megane towards the city centre along Anson Road, Longside. Seconds after he passed through the junction with Dickinson Road, a silver Audi S8 pulled up alongside the vehicle and discharged 7 shots into the red Megane. Four of those shots struck Ukal Chin and he was fatally wounded.
I was in work, and then I saw it was his girlfriend's phone and said, they shoot Ukal. And then the second time they phoned, I said, don't tell me, because I know the second time what they was gonna said, so you could die. And
the shooting took place on a busy main road in broad daylight, and a massive police investigation began, led by Detective Chief Inspector Janet Hudson.
We had no witnesses who'd seen the identity of the person who pulled the trigger or a driver. We didn't get the full registration number of the vehicle. We didn't recover the gun from this incident. So when you start to break it down to how am I going to detect this job, it's very difficult.
The police may not have found the murder weapon, but they did recover the bullets it fired. Ballistics experts at the Northern Firearms Unit got to work.
Seven bullets were recovered from this scene, of which 4 were determined to have hit Ukal Chin.
Experts suspected that the bullets had been fired from a Russian-made Baikal pistol. In order to confirm this, they test-fired a similar weapon.
Firing! Firing!
One bullet from the murder scene was examined alongside another one recovered from the test. And the rifling marks left as the projectile leaves the barrel were compared. They matched completely.
This confirmed that the rifling marks were from a Baikal.
The murder weapon that had been used to assassinate Ukal Chin was one that the Gooch gang were very familiar with.
In 2007, the Baikal was the weapon of choice by the Gooch gang. It was a weapon that was readily available and they could be purchased for a couple of £100.
Detectives now knew the type of gun used in the murder and the fact that this was a popular weapon with the Gooch gang. They were also making progress in another key area. Closed-circuit television systems did not exist 40 years ago, but now they are a vital weapon in the fight against serious crime. In Manchester, hundreds of cameras were recording around the time of the shooting, and some of them revealed in dramatic detail how the murder unfolded.
We established that around 30 minutes prior to the murder, Ukal had been driving through Levenshulme together with his friends.
Several cameras picked up the